Hi, this is Phil, and I'm here to tell you all about the Capes and Lunatics Patreon. Get early access to all of our interviews, including the monthly Chichester Chats with writer and comic book legend DG Chichester, new episodes of classic Capes and Lunatics shows, including The Quantum Zone, This, That, or the Third, and many, many more specials, all completely uncensored. Access starts for $3 a month, full video when you pledge $5 a month. Check out the link in our show notes or go to patreon.com/capesandlunatics. Hope to see you there. All right. All right, kids, welcome back to another week of the Chichester Chats. It's me, Phil, it's Lilith, and the man himself, who's been known to be a hell of a good writer, Mr. DG Chichester.
Good morning, guys. I can't believe it says episode 30. This is like that's a lot of good grace you've extended me, but
that's a lot of brain picking we've been doing.
I know it's there might be a neuron or two left. So how's everybody doing? Good?
Good. Excited to talk about this. We put this on the back burner, of course, for Black Armor, which
Yes,
was great. But this is a creator owned, and this is the one I was most excited for, definitely.
Oh, well, that's
to
very
see
cool.
What you would do when left to your own devices.
I don't know if it's that different. It is, because I always had a lot of leeway. I mean, people always talk about like, oh, such and such publisher made you do this, or I bet you they made you do that. And it's like, no, for the most part, my responsibilities are my responsibilities. I don't think there's a lot of instances where I didn't get to do what I wanted to do. But so this is its own thing, though, clearly, and approaching it now as opposed to when we originally came up with it was also different. We talked about that a little bit before because you guys were good enough to cover a bit of a preview episode before we did the Kickstarter.
Yeah, and if what we are talking about, hold on, there's up here, Axles Infernal #1.
Wow, look at the graphics. Look at this. Look, now we're getting all the cool stuff happening. Yeah.
That's for you. All right. Yeah. So, yeah. Like you said, we did talk about this before, and I think you said like you and your co-creator Karl Waller had this idea for years, and it was kind of like simmering on the back burner for a while, and
Right.
So how long have you guys been thinking about this? And
well, too long, really. It's it's the classic road to hell is paved with good intentions. I mean, we came up with the initial concept, and Carl remembers it differently than I do, but I'll tell you the version I remember, which is after we had worked on Motorhead at Dark Horse 20 odd years ago, right? And we had partnered on that book, and that was like 8 issues or so. It was a lot of fun, and we had a lot of fun together, and we had a good synergy. And then we should do something else, right? Mm-hmm. And but the hope is somebody's going to just call you up and say, hey, you guys, work on something else, but that's not happening right away. So we started to think of ideas to pitch. I didn't really have anything in mind. We'd barely begun probably the process of starting it. And then Carl called me late one night, and Carl was and is sort of stream of consciousness. And the way I remember it was he was, what if there was like these interdimensional truckers, and there's like strippers, and that's
You had me at strippers, to be quite honest.
Yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm in, and he remembers things about hell. I don't remember any of that. I remember interdimensional truckers and strippers, and so in between the two versions, there's some truth, but there wasn't much there. I think we'll both agree there wasn't much there. And it was like, okay, well, that's interesting. Let's talk about that some more. And it was the kind of thing I hung the phone up, because it was a phone in those days with a line, that you'd stretch out. Oh. And I know. And it was just one of those things that just started to kind of like suddenly percolate in my brain. And just so many things just kind of came to the fore very quickly of these, these characters, and obviously there's some mythology, you know, baked in there. You know, Percy has a Persephone, you know, alliance, you know, the classic Greek myth of going to hell, but all the other little bits, you know, I have had and have this stack of books on hell and devils and all these type of things, which I had read at various points, either because I was interested or because of work on things like Hellraiser, and just suddenly all of it just kind of came to the fore, and I wrote this gigantic omnibus proposal, that was not only what the concept was, but also here's 5, 6 storylines in the future. And I sent it off to Karl, and I said, well, I don't know if this is what you were thinking, but it's what, you know, came from our you know, our conversation. And he was into it, and I was into it, and he did some initial sketches, and we sent it around to a couple of places, and actually just one place. I thought Vertigo would be perfect for it at that point in time, and the editor who I thought would be perfect for it kind of treated us pretty shabbily, you know, in a way, you know. It was just, and it really put me off, and it put me off so much because I was in this very transitional state of, well, what am I going to do to make money and make a living and all this other kind of stuff. I put it to the side. I didn't think about it again, which was stupid, right? It was a very black and white mentality, right? This is the mind you're picking at, Lilith. It's become better over time, but at that point in time, it was like, it was either or, right? And I put it just to the side, and kind of lost touch with Karl. We touch base every now and again, but not really in an in-depth way. And this just, but it was always in the back of my mind. You know, it was the kind of thing that I thought, wow, what would have happened if we'd gotten to do that story? So I think that there's something to that, when stories just kind of keep picking at the back of your brain, that you better do something with them. And then finally, Karl and I reconnected, and I said, well, do you remember that thing? And he said it almost at the same time. Now, this is still, God help me, right? This is still 5, 6 years ago now, right? And then it was like, again, way too long. And he was, yeah, I remember that. That would be something I'd be really interested in actually bringing to life. And then I wrote, in a kind of a white heat, the 5 first issues of this thing, complete. Like, here, done. Here's the story we've been talking about for all these years. So that was the, you know, the 2 points of time that really made this thing real.
I mean, you keep getting down on yourself, saying, "Oh, it takes too long. It took too long." I mean, would you agree there's some
Things happen when they happen?
Yeah, would you agree there's some ideas maybe you should let them simmer for a while? And it's like, over the years, were you like, okay, well, I could add this idea to this, I could add this, I could add, you know, were you adding stuff along the way?
No, I think that's a great point, Phil. And I don't know if it's necessarily adding things to it, but I do think that there's something to that this version of this story, now, while it's in essence the same, right? The core, call it the spine or whatever, is the same. I think if I'd done it then, it would have been, and not necessarily there's anything wrong with the 90s or early 2000s or whatever. But I have the feeling it would have been a lot more off the shelf. And by that, I mean, it would have, not that there's not explosions and other things in this, but I think it would have been driven a lot more by sort of sheer force of plot device and contrivance than where this sort of goes now. And there's a lot of little nuance and moments, and even the ending, which obviously you don't have in your hands. But I think that the pace and the feel and the rhythms of it are their own thing now, and there's something I can appreciate more in a different way. You know, the whole cadence of even Percy's narration and the way she sort of kind of comes into things. You know, the here's what I know, like repeat that she keeps coming back to. You know, she does it in this issue, she'll do it in the next issue, and then she'll do, you know, some other things in subsequent issues. But it's a different feeling. So and it's hard to judge yourself against who you were then versus who you are now, though apparently I do it all the time. But but it's I do feel this is a better version of it. And so in that way, I'm happier that it took its time. But I'm also now feeling like, okay, it's moving. It needs to move right now. Yes, you know, you just get impatient. You want it to kind of come to life.
Well,
I think when we first started talking, like doing the Chichester Chats, weren't you like working on the graphic, or did that come a little bit later after we started talking?
What was I working on, Lilith?
The graphic for the comic. I remember something about like you sent it out the title, the Axles Infernal logo.
The logo, yeah, possibly, yeah. I mean, that would have been part of the gestation, you know, period, and maybe we were even talking about the point. We need a searchable database now of all episodes. You know,
get on that.
ChatGPT, exactly. Get on this. Analyze all our episodes. You know, at one point I'd gotten a really good, well-known letterer, you know, to work on a bunch of logos, and trying to find that feeling. And although that person, you know, did some really, really nice work, none of it ever felt quite right. You know, there was nothing wrong with any of it, but it didn't feel right. Yeah. And you know, you know when you know. And then finally, you know, I just went all in with Richard Starkings and Comic Craft, which is sort of like, all right, well, you know, if this part of the story takes place in Hades, then you may as well go to Olympus, you know, for the other end of it. Not that it's all Greek hells, even though I keep referencing them. You know, and Richard is just, you know, among the best of the best, and got it, and, you know, brought something to life that once we saw it, you know, just felt like, okay, that's it. I mean, my direction to him at one point was, you know, I want something that I'll tattoo on myself. I don't know that I'm going to get this logo tattooed on myself.
That's the goal.
Yeah, that'd be it.
Oh yeah.
All right. There you go. There's your big, you know, beyond stretch goal. Like what would you call that? Yes. But right, we'll do the live video stream of me getting tattooed. But I felt ultimately when we saw it, it had that feeling. It had that sort of, yes, it spoke to me. I think it spoke to Karl. I hope it spoke to Karl because it's done now and it's on the book. But
make it a big, huge goal. But it's like, if we hit it, you get that Carnage tattoo.
Oh, then the Carnage tattoo. You definitely want the Carnage tattoo.
Oh, Lil keeps bringing up the Carnage thing. She's like, oh,
it's just such a meme now. It's like, yeah.
All right. You need to just basically, you know, send, because I think he still has Venom, which means he would have Carnage. I mean, Devin Lewis, who edited Daredevil Black Armor, you know, Venom is, I think it's still within his purview. I know he shifted a few titles, but you just need to start sending him a weekly email, you know, of like, you know, we want Dan Chichester on Carnage.
Don't tempt us. We'll
Carnage has a book right now.
Just do it. You know, just.
But this is our back door to terror. So shh, don't tell.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. 5 pages in, you know, terror shows up and takes all of Carnage's parts. But that was. You know, one of the reasons I wanted to get that done was to make it feel real, because I felt like even though I had written the issues and Karl had started doing things, it was taking its sweet time in a way, you know, to kind of move certain things forward. And I felt a logo would make it feel like a real thing. And I think it did, you know, once we had that suddenly
good old
now.
Sales and marketing.
Yeah, you know, it's you've got something
totally
to start to anchor yourself around, right? It's not just here's my script and here's Karl's sketches or pages that he was starting to do in in different orders and such. The logo made it real. And beyond that, of course, there was an investment now, right? It was not just the investment of time, but we had put money forward to other professionals to, to pay for the logo. That wasn't a favor, right? I hired, Comic Craft. And I'm glad we did. I mean, I really like the logo. I think it's very striking, and it's old school. We looked at, it's an interesting exercise when you go through these things, right? Well, what do you like, right? That's one of the questions, like, he'll ask, and, you start to then go back and look at the things that you like, and then you start to pull them, and you start to realize, oh, I guess, I don't know if that's an old school style, but that sort
I
of
think it makes
feels
sense
it.
because it's a trucking story, and in a way,
Yeah,
trucking is kind of timeless. Like,
right,
the big American road trip, whether you're in a 67 Impala or a big rig,
right.
it's kind of that timeless journey. So kind of makes
And
sense to me.
and it has that feel, right? I think it has that feel. It has that sort of grindhouse, roadhouse,
Hmm.
sort of feel to it, which is, but a lot of, I would say, current logo treatments, if you even want to call them logos, they're font treatments, and they look like they're they're gaming themselves to be book covers. I mean, even you've even got to the titles of some things, or what the children found dead in the shadows, and it's like it's a 15-word title, and it's all in a sans serif font, stacked up in the corner of the book. This is a big, bold, House of Mystery, sort of thing, that between the shapes and the dragon head and and
It
the
sets the
color
mood for
effects,
sure.
it sets the mood for sure. Yeah, exactly. But even the title went through changes. Phil, back to your point of, like, originally this thing was called Route 666. That was the title 20 odd years ago, which was very on the nose and very
And
and
now there is an
and
actual comic with that title. So
exactly, right. You wait too long and somebody steals something. I don't think it has anything to do with this sort of
no.
approach, but yeah, something came out with that. But we went through probably, I think I told you we went through like 15 titles, or at least I went through 15 titles on Daredevil before sales said, well, yeah, well, we're calling it Black Armor. But
He's like, "Are you sure? Do you have a short memory? Are you sure that
yeah.
Well, it's
There
you
was
call it
Arthur, but
armor?"
okay.
there was a 45-minute block of time where Devin was like, "Hey, yeah, CB said we're cool with your title," and it's like, and then it was like, well, I guess that didn't last. But
That's why there was a character in every issue saying, they're talking the editorial. No, it's not armor. But okay.
oh, that was me. That was me.
Oh, I know.
That's the voice of DG Chichester saying it's not armor. Now it is. But we went through, I don't know, dozens of titles, to try to find things that felt right, and then again, looking at the demon books and the hell books, and there were so many things of grimoires, like these old medieval type of uh titles, like the Malleus Maleficum something. They had these sort of complex feelings to them, and that's where the Axles Infernal kind of came out of. It sort of felt phonetically like some of those things, and then I brought that to Karl, and he was like, yeah, that feels right, even though it's a little bit more not so on the nose, but also at the
It's
same time
succinct.
it's succinct, and it's there. And I was a little worried, like, people would, like, not quite get it, but that was like an irrational worry. Everybody, jumped on it right away, so that was fine.
And I mean, again, there's stuff now. I mean, you couldn't have done this like 20 years ago with the phone, just the little stuff.
No, yeah, and
Yeah.
that was as I always seem to do, give props to Greg Wright. He was the one who suggested that little thing at the end to kind of add something right at the end of the story, to not to wrap anything up, but just as a little bit more flavor.
Mhm.
And then when I created that, he was like, "Oh, I didn't expect it to look that good." I don't know what he was thinking.
I That's what a creative consultant does. Okay.
That's what a creative consultant does. No, I mean, he picked that story apart
It was just so funny.
radically.
I was just like, did you call Greg? And it turns out, as I'm reading the credits for everything, I'm like, oh, you did call Greg.
Yeah. Well, no, Greg, I may have said it in the first thing, and when we talked about the first time, but that first omnibus proposal, that I was so proud of, written many years ago, and I sent it to him, and many years ago, even then he was worse, if you can imagine, and worse and better. His reaction was, A, this is really good. Fuck you for coming up with it before I came up with it, and then B, stop trying to convince people that you're really well read. Like all my references. Like I was stacking so many references and this and that, it was just getting in the way of the story. Like, referencing this, or clearly I'd read that, or spent too much time with that book. And get to the story, clean it up. Whose story is this? And that would become actually one of the things that I've kept true to, which is actually a little bit of a challenge. Is, well, if it's Percy's story, everything in the story is from Percy's point of view. And again, you guys have only read the first issue, and we'll talk about that more in a second, maybe. But at no point in any of these stories, this first one or subsequent ones or anything else, that there's no cutaways, right? There's no, which would be really easy. It would be really easy to do. Well, let's do a scene over here with these other characters. And but because everything has to be through Percy's eyes, Percy always has to be in the scene, which complicates, things. But it felt very important once Greg sort of pointed that out and said, whose story is this? If it's her story, let me tell it from her experience and her point of view. Which ultimately, once you sort of find that rhythm, while it's a challenge, becomes another really spine of the story to carry yourself through.
I mean, would you say that is an important part of of being a writer, being a creative, is just having that friend who will tell you what works and what doesn't?
Oh my God.
Call you out on your bullshit. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Or just see things, Yeah. Call you out on your bullshit. I don't think he's ever had to call me out my bullshit, like full of myself in that way. He's called me out when I've been an idiot about other things, but everybody, I think if you're ever in any sort of creative endeavor, and that can be interpreted in many different ways, you always need that accountability group or that accountability person who is going to speak to you honestly, who's not going to say, oh, Lilith, that's a great job. Fine job, Phil. Nice work. Wow. You guys do a nice little podcast. That's really nice. Oh, good for you guys. You're not looking for somebody to pick you apart for the sake of picking you apart, but you are looking for that honest criticism, and also that one step removed to identify those things that maybe you're too close. You're too close and you're not seeing it. And that person is critically important. And I mean, I try to be pretty hard on myself to begin with, but sometimes I'm not, and then sometimes still I'll miss things. Miss things that seem very obvious. One of the things that I felt with this first issue initially was I wanted to keep. I've fabulously overwritten stuff in the distant past, right? I think Black Armor, struck a wonderful balance. But you go back to Fall from Graces and things like this, and it's like, how many words can I fit on this page? It seems. And I wanted to streamline this a lot, and I felt like the minimal amount of dialogue and the minimal amount of sound effects and Percy's narration and such. And then when actually Greg looked at the first layout of that, the problem he saw was, and it's a comic book problem, right? Your eye tends to move very quickly across a page when there's nothing there, and that makes the book feel thinner and you're not, he said you're not taking in as much as you should be taking in. So I didn't needlessly add dialogue, but I addressed certain things and gave a little beat of, a caption here or a dialogue balloon here to kind of slow the pace of the reader so that they could take it in a better way, which is something like in me trying to streamline it, I did lose sight of. So that's one of the many important parts that person plays.
But speaking of dialogue, I love like even all the way back to your original Daredevil run, just like your crowd scenes with the just like people in the crowd talking about the dialogue and stuff. And was there any self-insert characters here? Maybe one of the two drone operators who are like, we start our own drone business. Yeah, buzzed. Yeah.
Was there any what? Were
Well, I mean, was that kind of a self-insert character where the guy, the two guys were talking about drones and
Oh no, I think that that drone scene, goes was it originally a drone scene? I'm trying to
not
think.
20 years ago, but I mean,
No, not necessarily. No, I think yeah, no, I don't think they were meant to be self-referential like in that way, but they were certainly a convenience to get the truck to go, off the rails and almost, hit the girl and such. So the girl being almost hit by the truck was always the inciting event. That there was always that moment of Percy being, in the scene at the time and making the decision to save the little girl and going with that whole idea. There's not a thing I can do to do this, and I'm going to do it anyway, or a thing I can do to save her, and yet she's going to go into action. Oddly enough, originally the scene in my mind, and I remember the first conversations with Karl were, many years ago, were it was in a city for some reason. It was in a more like a New York type of location, and feeling like the truck like appearing there was, even more drastic and radical. But I remember being on vacation and outside of Yosemite, actually, like in a little town called Mariposa, which is where this is, right? It's Mariposa. And so even though it says does not represent any real physical locations, imagine in the make-believe world, it does. And but that feeling of a small town like that, and that kind of dusty California air and everything like that, just felt more on the edge, for her. And I think that was another thing that felt more right, given the time between then and now.
and again,
Oh, sorry, Phil. What inspired you to make your lead character a woman?
It was probably a way to better refine that, again, my memory, the stripper thing, Lilith. Like, I don't want to tell a story about strippers. I didn't want to, I certainly didn't want to, deal with a over sexualized, caricature of a character. There are no, not safe for work or, variant covers, with Percy, like, leaning over, eating ice cream or something like that. There's, although I guess those do very well from what I could tell from Kickstarter, but, it was, that's when and sending it back to Karl, it's like, okay, there's truckers and there's an interdimensional aspect and there's a woman in this, but it's not the mix you were talking about. It was just sort of the feeling, and it wasn't even, and again, that's we're going way, way back, but it wasn't like I was sitting there saying, oh, I'm going to tell a Persephone story, right? And then backing out and, oh, and I'll call her Percy, and, and do that. And I'm going to tell my Persephone myth. It was more that genesis of those little bits that Karl threw out there did become these things. Okay. The stripper becomes a woman named Percy. The truckers become this interdimensional like delivery system for hell. And but then if she's the character, if she's will become the main character, then she has to have a certain strength of character, and be able to shoulder all this in that way. And ultimately over time, I've written an entire very broken background for her beyond what we're seeing so far. We're seeing little teases of it, in that rear view mirror thing. But she's got a lot of things going on, which is partly the reason that she falls into this assignment, job listing, if you will. But I think you follow the muse on that. It just, that was a place where it just felt, because of the spark that Karl had put out. Okay, the stripper becomes a real woman, and now it was trying to give him back the things he had said, I guess, in a way, but not what he was expecting, but which he embraced. He ran with it.
And male strippers don't sell, Lilith.
I mean, Chippendales and Thunder Down Under would beg to disagree, but
yeah. We've got if we'll get to the second storyline, there's a leather bound character who could qualify as a male stripper.
My.
So,
So when you got the images of Percy back, did it all just click for you and help push the other things out, or
not in this case it was great to see them, and but it was so fully formed in my head, Lilith, not to the length of hair and curve of hip and and all that sort of thing, but they felt very fully formed in my head, in the description. So Karl's things were accents, and then they become, then they start to take on different moments, which I always have to then remind myself. Like in my mind, Percy always had cowboy boots. Karl gave her these Doc Martens, so I have to keep reminding myself that she has these Doc Martens type of things. Necros, the demon that we sort of see at the end, in that end spread, who's not really like heavily identified in this issue, but plays a massive role in the next story and throughout. Karl ended up designing it much differently and gave him like these little 4 insect arm type things, and made him a white flesh, and a pale white, snow white, alabaster skin, instead of what I was thinking in terms of red. And he went through way too many design choices on the the outfit that he'd wear, but a lot of them were they just had a very fully formed sense of me, so I didn't need to see the visuals so much, as I might have in other instances, to become real. But it's cool to see them, obviously. Like they're very they're very effective to then start to feel like it's coming to life.
Are we going to get any stories where it's like, oh, one issue is going to be just Percy's origin or Necros's origin, or are we just going to get little bits along the way?
It would be little bits along the way. You might get the Percy thing, Phil, but if I stick to it's Percy's story, it has to, in my mind, it has to be, you'd get Percy's thing, or if she was digging, into, it would have to be that way. You're never going to get just the Virgil story on its own. Virgil's got his own, like twisted backstory. It's going to have to involve her finding something or probing on something, or getting into his head. Otherwise I'd upend the structure, which is an incredibly artificial structure, but it feels like it's important, at least right now, to kind of keep it with me. What is interesting, and I was using this as a psychological tactic to goad Karl along as well at one point, was just feeling like, well, we've got this opening storyline, then there's another big storyline that follows, and there's another big storyline that follows that. Like there are all these little like arcs. Is when you think about the deliveries from hell, they all don't have to be these massive things, right? Sometimes it's just like, hey, I got a package for Phil. Lilith, sign for this. Maybe not. So, I've written these little tiny 8-10 page stories, which, we've talked about stringing together, into like, here's a 30-page issue, right? Or something like that, four little mini deliveries, which could be done by Karl or could be done by somebody else. And those are nice little flavors. They have like all the right beats, but they they sort of open up this idea that there's more going on than just the big storylines. The big storylines
Little world
driven by
expansion. Okay, I was just
yeah.
gonna ask you, like, what if, like, is there a character speaking to you for like a spin-off series? If everything goes to plan, would you consider that?
I don't know, maybe,
Or would you
but
like
that
more like just an anthology annual kind of style thing every now
I
and
think
then?
I think right now that like no character has sort of overcome the Percy spine, so far. Like it's her story ultimately,
Mhm.
like her story of why she's here, what it's going to do to her, how she's going to try to get out of it. Will she get out of it? What will she overcome? To do that. And you're just getting the tease of her getting into that truck and like, what the fuck does this all mean? Next issue is really where essentially the contract gets put in front of her and like, sign or die in that classic um, make a deal with the devil sort of way, which then really puts her on the literal road and the conditions of what it means and what the conditions might be to try to get out of it. um and um but I feel like it's so much her story, it's hard to sort of say, oh well, Virgil gets a spin-off story. Virgil's an important character, but Virgil serves Percy.
Mm-hmm.
Necros is an important character, but Necros very much serves, Percy's needs, within this, even though he becomes, a very strong, foil. So I don't see anybody else suddenly becoming a spin-off, but I do see these little, like either mini one-off stories or even, um, certain deliveries on I said to Karl, you could do a 4-issue mini series that is just each issue could be deliveries around certain certain times of the year. Like one could just be all about Christmas deliveries, because how many kids send letters out to Santa, but
And
they
accidentally put Satan.
Satan,
Yeah,
exactly,
that's a
right, yeah,
thing. It really is.
juxtapose, it's a real thing, right? So how many of those letters are stacked up in hell and saying, oh, okay, well, we better deliver now.
Now I want
Which,
that.
yeah, now you want that, right? I want that too. Like that could be a lot of fun. So like 4 deliveries, was like 4 weddings and a funeral, like just 4 deliveries across 4 different important times of the year. What's Black Friday, and who the hell
Oh,
is your person,
Oh,
you
gee.
know. So,
Or like Red Friday.
Red Fry, yeah, and there's just I think there's just like an endless amount of like fun that you can. There is. I mean, I just know from the things we've come up with and the notes that we've taken. It's like it's too much almost in one way, and that's why you sort of want to get it out there.
I mean, just building off of Lilith's question, whether you would do something spinning out of this, or even just like a second book that has nothing to do with the Axles Infernal verse,
Mm-hmm.
would you do 2 books at the same time or more on Kickstarter? Or I mean, again, you've gone through it the first time, or were you just like, I don't know, this Kickstarter thing? What have you learned about Kickstarter that you didn't know before? And is it just
It's brutal, man. I mean, it's and certainly, yeah. I mean, it's not for the faint of heart. I mean, I know, and I picked the brains of a lot of people who've done it, and they've done more than I have, and so their experience was, you, mind blowing and so necessary. And you see me thank them in the back of the book. Jimmy Palmiotti, Trevor Fernandez Linkowitz, Graham Nolan, uh, you know, um, um, Mark McKenna. These are guys who've done successful campaigns multiple times, and but it's a huge heavy lift. I mean, you're setting up the Kickstarter page. You're trying to figure out what's the right balance of offers and specials and stretch goals. You're creating in my case, probably too much, a bunch of social media that you're trying to pump out and trying to get, people's attention on it. You're writing to people and, saying, hey, I'm doing a Kickstarter. Can you help me out? Can you, push this out to your mailing list? I'm asking colleagues, to read it and, give me pull quotes. I mean, it's beyond a full-time job. And it was very, uh, and then then you succeed, and then you're dealing with a printer, and you're overcoming finding the right printer, and which we had beforehand, but still there were some printing issues that had to be addressed, and I had to work with that, and I had to do a lot of it, and then getting together with Karl and packaging them up and sending them out. It's a lot of work. And then it's a lot of spam. You get a lot of like,
Oh yeah.
as soon as you put the campaign up. Have you done one, Lilith? Have you done like a
No,
Kickstarter?
just spam in general is terrible over the
Well,
internet.
right, but there's a special breed of Kickstarter spam that the second you put something live,
Here's
you
a
get
list. Here's this. Yeah.
right. I am very friendly person from foreign country who cannot write English well, but have run many a Kickstarter successful campaign. Will do same for you. And yes, okay, I'm definitely going to hit click buy on this. But you get dozens of those, and you're weeding those out amongst the people who are like really legitimately asking, well, if I get this, can I get the sticker or something like that? And then you're also getting a ton of, try to put my thing in, my credit card, didn't take, can you, help me by putting funds in my account somewhere else? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's not how Kickstarter works, but thanks. Nice try. So, so it's a lot of work, and it was not, it is the shouldering plus of the thing you don't want to do when you're creating. And I've always been one to say to people, well, in today's day and age,
Yeah, do
unfortunately, you
it
can't
all.
just create. You can't just create. You have to do the other stuff. That's just the way the world is. But having to actually do it, man, did I feel like an idiot for telling people that all these years. Because I was in my mind, I was like, I just want to go back to writing this thing. I don't want to have to do all this crap. Um, but and I don't know that it becomes easier. I mean, Kickstarter's interface, it's gotten a little bit better. I've been poking around for issue 2. Um, but when I was doing it, you would think that a system that is based on like selling the proposition of your project, whatever it is, would be super refined. I don't know if you've ever like used like a website builder like Wix or Squarespace or something like that, which is, or even Canva, like a lot of
Yeah.
like super drag and drop and like, easy systems. Man, Kickstarter was like a bear. Like every graphic you wanted to upload, you had to go to a separate screen, then upload it, and then and then go back to the main screen. And it felt like something from 10, 15 years ago, and this hugely onerous interface to try to kind of then put all your pieces of your project together. And I'm sure there's a good reason for that, uh, but it was technological reason for it, but it was it
Yeah,
added
in the
to it.
world of just point and click and drag and drop, yeah, I totally get it.
Yeah, you just I expected something like that. Like here's my gallery of images, drag them over here, do this, add this, your Bob's your uncle, you're done. But you still have to think through a lot of stuff. I mean, I looked at, looked at a ton of things, what are the offers? What are the right things? That's where I went down the whole rabbit hole of here's my Kickstarter project, and there's 30 progressively more porny, variant covers, slightly salacious, total full on whatever, and I guess that's a thing, but we didn't go down that route.
I still
Um,
really enjoyed the trailer. I think the trailer was the best part.
I had fun with the trailer. The trailer was probably one of the most fun part I had too, and finding the woman who did the voiceover was a lot of fun. You know, that was a nice little use of Upwork and doing some auditions and really digging what she had done.
Well, thank you for not using generative AI for that.
No, I couldn't. I mean, no, I doubt. Oh, who knows? But I doubt that, and I wouldn't want to do that. I had too much fun working with that person. If I choose to do another trailer in that style with that kind of voiceover, I would definitely go back to her and pull her
Because
back
it like
in.
kind of suits with like the narration. Like, yeah, it just kind of once you when you after you read the book, you're like, oh, it all like yeah, it's a good trailer. It's a good trailer. It's not a bait and click, bait and switch trailer. Like some of
No,
these
no,
others
it
are.
all, yeah, it leads into it, and she felt right. She felt like she got it. I think I had given her like Aaron Brockovich clips, to kind of like convey that sense of like somebody who's really beaten up and but still has a strong, character to it, and she definitely, ran with it in a cool way. I think it was her first Upwork job too, which was fun to kind of give somebody that. So, so what did you guys think of it? Like now, like turn it back on you. I mean, you've read it. What is it? How does it come across? How does it come across in
The
comparison
pacing was
to other
amazing. Like
things?
I sped through it, like not because it was thin, but like it was so good. I looked up. I was like,
Mhm.
wait a minute, what? We're done, and I
I
gotta
got
wait for two.
exactly. That's exactly my reaction. I was like, I need more. I'm like, well, I'm like, that's it. And I'm like, I need more.
He should have put it
That's
out as a trade.
you know that was part of the thinking too. And Graham Nolan, who's just a great guy for advice and shit. I can't thank him enough. He was like, it's 5 issues, do 5 issues. And he said, do the 5 issue trade. Like don't you know I don't think he said dick around, but essentially dick around like, with like
Mhm.
the single issues. But this again was like a psychological thing. Like I couldn't, not 5 issues the way that we were kind of going along, I thought would just take even more time, right? From getting it out there was seeing something real was a galvanizing thing, I think, for Karl, as well to kind of move this forward.
Oh, I
But
totally
it,
get the logistics of it, but it was just so good. Like I loved like it just immediately
Mhm.
engrossed. And I would even say that if you hadn't wrote it, like if this was somebody else, it's just like a really good, solid story that just sucks you in. You get to the last page, and you're like, what the hell? Literally, like
literally, like what the
can't
hell?
wait for this issue too. And that's kind of the only thing that I kind of like. I love that Kickstarter gives creator own control and things, but then it's like, oh, now we got to go through another campaign.
I know, I know, I know. Well,
But it's gonna
I
totally
mean,
be worth the wait, I think. But I loved it.
it's good to hear that, and I mean, not just because it's sort of but we haven't really heard much. I know we sent the damn things out. I know you got it. And I've been trying to kind of like, well, what did anybody think of it? Did anybody read it? Like, what's going on with
If
it?
you
So,
should probably push your mailing list like for quotes or something, and then you can put them
yeah,
on like to for the second part. Like here's
yeah,
what people said about the first issue.
you're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, that's a way to kind of like, yeah, draw more attention, around it. Yeah, definitely will do that.
It's
But
damn good. It really delivers.
see, that's not bad. That's better than some of the pull quotes I got from some of the industry pros that I went after. What do you want me to write? I don't know. You're creative. Figure out something.
I really enjoyed the art on this too. Like I love like kind of like the not necessarily super desaturated, but like dusty, but
Yeah.
not in a sepia kind of way. Like I really enjoyed like the interpretation of that for sure.
Yeah, Carl worked really hard with Wes Wong, who did the colors, to find that look, and a very almost European, but not European, type of approach, and give it a little bit more of that watercolor
Mm-hmm.
feel. And I think it was a very successful choice, of all the
Gives
things
it
that it
like
could have
that
been.
dreamy, hazy. I
Hmm.
don't know what the hell I just got myself into kind of feel,
Right, right. And
which is
it's
appropriate.
it's a you only get the one real big scene, quote unquote, in hell with the spread, but you get a little taste of it when the truck, Sammy, shows up. But there's a conceit that all the scenes in hell, in any of the hells, are the ones that are super saturated, right? So everything that's in the real world, our world, is a little bit more of that dusty thing. But when you hit the hell stuff, that's where it goes, over
Sharp
the top.
and clear.
Yeah, really sharp and clear, which is, which was a nice, interesting reversal of what you would normally think, right? You go to hell and it becomes all, black and
No, you're
white
in
and
hell. It
desaturated.
snaps. You're
Yeah, it snaps.
laser
Like this
focused.
is
Like, oh no.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So it's fun. And I really want
That
to,
path,
get
that path of good intentions really led me here, did it?
truer words were never spoken, but.
And I know you're going to say it probably doesn't matter, but did it help the creative process at all that you weren't on like a monthly schedule, like, a big 2-monthly schedule where you could set your own schedule? Did it help that at all?
No, I think that's hurt it. I think that,
Oh, really?
I mean, I've ridden Karl pretty hard and to get to that point and and I've had to play writer and editor and publisher and all these things, to kind of carry it through. And that's you need deadlines are important, like the old Steve Jobs quote, we're talking about like when they were building the first Macintosh and everyone was like, oh well, we need to nuance this and we need to, we're artists, we need to fix the software or refine the edge of the cabinet or all this stuff. And his famous quote is real artists ship, and there's a point at which it's like, you cut it off and you have to get it done and you can't keep going round and round and round. And you need, deadlines clarify, right? Deadlines, a project without a deadline is a dream, and you need to, and dreams aren't real. And I think you need that, and it may not have to be it's due in 2 weeks or, or 4 weeks or 2 months or whatever, but it has to have something that is kind of that sort of Damocles hanging over your head to kind of get yourself to the next, because it's not just on you, right? I mean, I've written them all, so I can sort of sit back and reread it and make sure it's like
done.
well, unfortunately not, right? It's like, but yes, in some ways that part of it is done. But when Karl finishes the art, right, then okay, now it's Pat, and then and then it's Wes, and they have to be worked with, and it has to fit within their schedules too, right? Pat's not just sitting around waiting for us to send it to him, but Pat's super fast, so I'm not really worried about Pat, and Wes is pretty fast too. But those are still things you have to fit in. And so that's why, again, deadlines are important, because they fit everything and they drive you to the next, and then you can't. So yeah, I feel that they're, they're always important. You don't want them to be abused either. I did a project recently for somebody and it was like well, can you do it like in a week, which was so totally unreasonable. And I said, I can, but just because I can, and you'll see that I can, and you'll see that it's good, this is not your license to abuse me in the future. Like the fact I can do it, and I know I can do it, does not mean this is how we're going to work.
The one trick
forward.
I learned in life, it's from I think it's from CIS, like the guy that like does the DNA or something. He's like, yeah, I set everybody's expectations. I tell them it takes like 52 hours. Really, it only takes like 36. But I just don't want them bugging me. And
exactly.
I was like, yeah, I can get it done, but I don't want you bothering me breathing down my neck. So I kind of just,
right.
There's the SLA, like which what you're gonna deliver to your partner. Then there's the SLO, the time it actually takes, and you need a little buffer between the two, just in case.
Right. So.
Oh, that Star Trek: The Next Generation episode where they find Scotty and Scotty's telling Geordi, he's like, "You actually didn't tell the captain actually how long it actually takes, did you?" You're like, "No,
exactly.
You're not going to get your reputation as a miracle worker if you tell them exactly how long it's going to take."
You get your
Exactly.
you get your Starfleet like engineering like certification pulled if you do that. That's like, wait, you did that? That's against regulation 47376. It's like
Yeah,
I'm
I,
gonna
I
put you
love
up for
Percy
court
though.
martial.
I do. I can't wait to see what else she does, and I hope it
Good.
goes past 5. I hope it connects with people and we get more than 5 issues and the mini delivery service that you're pitching, the mini delivery stories.
That's the hope. I mean, it's like I'm actually, I'm at the follow-up storyline which is 7 issues right now. That's actually kind of written too. I mean, it's half scripted and written, and then we always saw this as finite, right? We always saw this as a series of series, but ultimately it gets, it's a conclusion. Like, there's probably, this wasn't meant to run until, oh, I guess it's time to finish. Like, there's a point at which it needs to finish so that Percy's story is complete.
I
And
like that, but
that's
I hate that. But I get that from a creative perspective. You want to go you want to leave on a high note,
yeah,
not end with a whimper too.
right, right, and or that you're sort of like repeating yourself. My God, I just read something recently. It made me almost feel like I'd rather read a Carnage series, and
Yo,
and it, and it was by a well-known creator, and it featured a well-known character, and it was just this endless cycle. It's 12 fucking issues, excuse me, 240 fucking pages, right? and and the number of scenes that they repeated and jokes that they repeated, and not in a good way, right? It was just like this lazy storytelling of like, I don't know, just let me fill the space and let's have these characters do this again or say this again, all of whom were stupid. Like, there was, everyone was acting like an idiot, and it was just, man, you are overstaying your welcome like so much. If you have 12 issues to do this, if you have that many pages to do this, just like do something amazing, do something incredible. Like, every scene should be something new. And I was, but I think that is the thing. You want to leave people wanting more. And I think that what we're thinking with this and with what Percy needs to do and where she needs to go is just the right amount. Um, Not that there couldn't be more and there could be more side stories. I mean, you could ostensibly tell this whole thing if you get to it, and then come back and do lots of these little like side stories, right? There's always going to be of other deliveries. There was always another Christmas delivery or Black Friday delivery or Red Friday or whatever, Red Saturday. Um, and but the main part feels like it has to be finite, otherwise you do overstay your welcome for yourself and for the characters. You're stretching it out because you want to just spend more time with them.
I mean, even if you do end this, would you start up another book? I mean, I'm not. I don't want to give up new DG Chichester content. I have it. I don't. I'm not. I'm.
yeah, like we're kind of hooked at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
We got kind of
Like
spoiled.
something that's within like the century. Yeah, it's kind of cool, isn't it? It's I don't, I don't know. I mean, you don't say no. I mean, this is sort of like my focus in terms of my own comic right now. I mean, there are the 2 projects I'm doing for Black Box Comics,
No.
which one is a sort of a a cyber thriller. The other one is a sort of a sword and sorcery sort of thing. Both of which are written. The cyber heist thriller is totally written, and then the sword and sorcery is all plotted out, and then is about half scripted through, and I'll be finished with the scripting probably by, I would think, the end of April. So, but I don't know what their schedule is like in terms of where they're going with trying to get things out or artwork. I would hope soon, but those I've helped create, a little bit. Those aren't just total. I mean, they are work for hire, but they are, they came to me with like this much of the concept and said, "Can you help us like develop the concept?" So I have a little bit of a piece of the action, there, and a little bit more investment in putting the world together.
Oh, look at you back in the game.
Yeah,
We're just so happy for you, honestly.
I am too. It's fun. It's a fun thing, and it makes me sort of kick myself.
Does it feel different though? Like now coming back to the industry after all this time, what's
Yeah,
changed for you?
I know what I'm doing, but
Listen, as somebody who read epics and like a lot of the stuff that you edited, you always knew what you were doing. Like Hellraiser, all that. You always knew what you're doing. You just got better with age, and you're more decisive now. And
Thank you,
that just
Lilith.
comes with age. Like I said,
Yeah, it does.
this all happened at a certain time because it all came together with all the skills that you've accumulated over your life. That's it.
I
It's the
totally
moment.
agree with that. I totally agree with that. I always felt I knew what I was doing with Hellraiser. I always did. I mean,
I can't recommend that book enough. I love it.
Hellraiser and Nightbreed, I always felt like I definitely knew what I was doing. Daredevil, I knew what I was doing 68% of the time, 70% of the time, maybe. In other, you could balance it out with other places. But no, I think that's exactly right. It's just it's that, yeah, it's that level of the skill set, has matured. You've picked up other skills,
I think that
and
marketing skill really you can just really coast on that. Honestly, nowadays that's what everybody loves the most. They're like, oh, you know how to run your social media? Charge extra for that. Just
but also that, when I was a creative director, on staff, and people would always look at me like funny when I would say it, and they had to listen to me because I was the creative director, but clearly they wish they didn't have to. But I would always insist that what we were doing was storytelling, not trying to turn advertising into some kind of, highfalutin thing. But if you were trying to communicate with somebody through a web page or banners or, or print ad or TV spot or whatever, you're telling a story. And I firmly believe that, and that was a difference than a lot of people were doing, which was sort of just putting words in a digital banner or words on a web page or saying this is how the web page is going to animate. Well, that's great that it's animating, but what's it doing while it's animating? But I think that doing that for so many years also, sharing that with other people, many of whom got it, and I think became better, for it. But it also refined my sense of it as well, right? By having to constantly storytell for particular needs, even though those needs, were not the types of stories that were about going to hell or jumping off Hell's Kitchen rooftops or anything like that, were allowed me to sort of hone my craft so that I could hit something like these types of stories now, I think, in a stronger way. And I will say one thing for the long gestation period of Axles Infernal is this is really what kind of got me back into writing comics, right? Having written this back a while ago, and I think allowed me to test out those muscles and refeel that space. And I think I know that it did, the the good stuff in Daredevil Black Armor is a direct ref, follow of having been able to write Axles Infernal, because I got that can you do this anymore out of the way with that. And so when this came along, when Daredevil came along again, it was like, yeah, I know how to do that. I know how to structure that. I know what I need to do within that. So even not having any idea that that was ever going to be a thing, the two have a sort of a meet cute in that way. So
now I'm just picturing the Daredevil movie Elektra and Matt in the playground. That's the meet cute.
Exactly.
I
Like
love that movie. I don't care. You can hate me. I love that movie. Yeah, we couldn't be happier. We couldn't be prouder.
All right.
Thank you guys. Really glad. So thanks for doing this on this, and thanks for reading the book, and I'll definitely be keeping you up to date on what's coming next.
That's a great job. But before we go, kids, if you want your Daredevil Black Armors or your Axel Infernal #1 signed, you have an appearance next weekend, correct? That was
I do. There's a bunch of appearances coming up, but let's focus on this next weekend. If you are in Indianapolis at the Indiana Comic Convention this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right? 22nd through 24th. I'll be there. Drop by. I'll actually have some Axles Infernals on hand as long as the luggage doesn't go over the weight, to sell there. And an autograph. Usual offers apply. First person who shows up with a black armor gets that autograph for free. And if anybody shows up in a black armor cosplay holding a copy of Black Armor, they will get a full set of Fall from Grace, the original run.
Come on, Phil. Let's do
And
it.
let's do it.
Oh,
Going there. So nobody's yet been able to do that. People show up with the first Black Armor or Black Armor first of the day. I'll be happy to do that. But yeah, so please, if you're in the area, come on by and say hi.
You can't miss him. He's got a fabulous banner.
There you go.
Oh, what does anyone get anything if they come in like a Percy cosplay or something?
Do I have any Percy stickers? I don't know. I do have a couple of cool Percy stickers now that I think of it. I'm gonna have to bring those with me just in case. If somebody shows up in an Axles Infernal cosplay of any type, I will at least have 1 or 2 Percy stickers on hand just for that reason.
Don't say that. It'll be like, I was the guy flying the drone.
Exactly. Yeah, not a, yeah. I'll be wearing my Charlie Brown like shirt, whatever Karl was thinking there. But
all right, so yeah, several upcoming appearances. You said so.
That, yeah. I mean, we can hit up the other ones, but I'll be there. I'll be at GalaxyCon in San Jose. Over the summer, I'll be at GalaxyCon, I think, in Oklahoma City. Whenever that one is. That one might be in May. I'll be in Hershey, Pennsylvania, in midsummer, late June, I think it is. And then I believe I'm at Dragon Con at the end of the summer. So I think that'll do it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. We always appreciate you.
Yes, no, it's great, guys. Good seeing you both. Sorry about the situation yesterday, and thanks for making up for it today. Life comes first.
And
so
that's unavoidable. So yeah, keep an eye on his social media. Go to that Substack. Yeah.
All right, folks, have a great day.
Thank you, sir.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right.